The Department of Homeland Security expects the threat environment to remain high in the United States over the next year.
That's right. The agency's annual report is used to evaluate the growing number of evolving foreign and domestic threats. It also provides an overview of the threat landscape to the public and other agencies for the year ahead. And CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga is in our Washington bureau. She's been covering this for us. So, Nicole, talk to us about the purpose of this assessment and really the big headlines, the biggest threats to the United States over the next year.
Yeah, Lana, an annual assessment. Interestingly enough, this report points out that lone offenders continue to pose the greatest threat of carrying out attacks on Americans with little to no warning. And it points out that most mass casualty attacks in the U.S. last year were motivated not by ideology, but were associated with suspected or confirmed mental illness or driven by relationship grievances. Now, let's be clear, and this is important, these factors by themselves are not indicators of violence. In fact, someone suffering from mental illness is far more likely to be the victim of a crime, but it gives you a sense of the numbers here. Over the last year, at least 8 mass casualty attacks, primarily motivated by reasons other than an ideology, have occurred within the United States, killing at least 38 and injuring 68. And we also learn in this report, illegal drugs smuggled and sold in the U.S. continue to kill more Americans than any other security threat in the U.S. So far this year, DHS seizures of fentanyl and pill presses, which of course traffickers use to make more toxic drug mixtures, often with fentanyl, those seizures have declined compared to 2023, some good news, but they still remain elevated. And in fact, U.S.-based drug traffickers are also increasingly augmenting some of those fentanyl-related pills with additives like xylazine, alternatives like nitazene. The latter can be 10 times more potent than fentanyl.
Oh.
It's really useful to know the overall trends. And we mentioned that the threat environment remains high for the next year, but we're just a few weeks out from Election Day itself, although early voting has already begun. Did the report point to any specific threats as it relates to the election?
It did, and one senior Homeland Security official I spoke with this morning put it to me this way. This threat, this election security threat, is only getting more sophisticated and more serious. And that's because the 2024 election cycle already underway is an attractive target for many adversaries who aim to instill fear among voters, candidates, election workers, and disrupt election processes leading up to Election Day. And the report assesses that nation-state actors, Russia, China, Iran, will almost certainly continue over the next few weeks to target democratic processes with the aims of affecting U.S. voter preferences and undermining confidence in our elections. There's also misinformation being propounded about the election process itself, according to DHS officials who tell CBS that deepfakes are now increasingly trying to mislead people about the time, place, and even the manner of elections. And of course, there are those physical threats against election workers, including most recently white powder letters being sent to them to scare them or to try to scare them. And DHS officials also concerned that election workers on Election Day might be the subject to some of those physical threats.
And Nicole, obviously, hanging over these threat assessments, it's worth discussing the conflict in the Middle East, and as that intensifies, how that might affect threats to the U.S. homeland. What are we hearing from U.S. officials?
And you mentioned the high holidays coming up, and October 7th, the anniversary. Officials very wary that those dates could act as triggers. Officials warning about the likelihood of violence motivated really just from the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. And this report indicating that between September 2023 and July 2024, domestic violent extremists driven by, various anti-government, racial or gender-related motivations have conducted at least 4 attacks in the homeland, 1 resulting in death, U.S. law enforcement disrupting at least 7 additional violent extremist plots. And of course, the efforts of domestic violent extremists range from targeting ethnic and religious minorities, government officials, ideological opponents, with homegrown violent extremists primarily focusing on faith-based organizations. And that piece has also increased given the ongoing conflict overseas. Zooming out, given Iran's most recent missile attack on Israel and amid this escalating conflict, a senior DHS official telling CBS News that the intelligence community doesn't yet have a crystal clear assessment of what exactly Iranian intentions sanctions might be, but they do know what Iran is capable of. You know, this is a foreign adversary with global reach that can target U.S. interests around the world and can also engage with individuals here in the U.S. in ways that present potential threats to the homeland. Lana, Errol.
Yeah, good for everyone to know about this threat assessment. Nicole, thanks for walking us through it all.
Thank you.
Thanks.